Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for districts. The focus of this webinar is goals. My name is Sue Reynolds and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So first of all, I want to say congratulations to all of our districts. All 16 of our districts were awarded the Lilly Counseling Initiative Planning Grant, so that is wonderful. And every single one of the 157 RSC schools that we're supporting and we have applied for the Lilly Planning Grant received that grant, all the public schools and charters. So we're just very, very pleased that everyone that we're working with now in the 2016 and 17 cohorts have funding to support the planning phase of their work with us. So that is awesome. There were a couple of private schools that didn't qualify for the grant because Lilly did not award funding to private schools, only publics and charters. So they're unfortunately don't have that funding. So, but for everybody else, you do. And congratulations for sending in your grant app and getting it approved. And that's just super. So every single one of our schools and our districts has received funding. So that is awesome. So, okay, so here's the agenda for today. It's a pretty packed agenda. We want to spend a little bit of time looking back on the last month. We've had some questions from districts and schools, and I have a feeling that many of you have the same questions, so I want to cover a little bit of that. Then we'll look forward. There's one RSC update in the online system that I want to show you. And then we'll talk about this month's activities, what the schools are doing, and then what the districts need to do. And then we'll end up with some suggestions for a district discussion that you might have with your district level steering team after this webinar. So, and as I mentioned earlier, please make sure you're asking questions. You can type them into the chat box or raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can just ask those questions. So that would be great. So here we go. So let's start with looking back at last month. First of all, let's review what the activities were for last month. So in last month, we were really getting ready to have discussions with the councils in your schools. So each of your schools put together a steering team. They recruited a school counseling council, and they collected data. They collected that data through a student survey, a counselor survey, and then later we're also going to add in a self-study. So for most of our schools, that went well. We have surveyed, I meant to check right before we got live on the webinar, but we've surveyed several thousand students in the past few weeks. And I spot checked, and for most of our schools, that surveying is really going well. You're getting kids, their schools are getting kids to the computers, and they're taking the survey. So haven't had any glitches at all with the survey technology. So things are going really smoothly even when we have thousands of students all surveying at the same time. So that's gone really, really well. Okay, we do have some schools that are feeling a little overwhelmed at the moment. And I just wanted to assure you that that is normal. With some of our schools, the light bulb goes off really early that they have to hit the ground running, and how important all of these timelines are, that, you know, if they don't hit one timeline, the next timeline is going to come up, and now they're behind, and now they're feeling overwhelmed. We had a couple of schools that did not participate for whatever reason in the first webinar for schools, and so they were really lost. So we just want you to know that if some of your schools are feeling overwhelmed right now, I'm not too concerned about that is kind of normal for some schools for a variety of reasons. So, but now we need to think about, okay, what are we going to do about that? Because we don't want the schools to just be totally, totally overwhelmed. So here are some solutions that if schools talk with you about being overwhelmed, especially with the survey, that you might suggest to them. First of all, we really want schools to survey 95 or more, ideally 100% of the students in their building. And it just makes the discussion so much richer later if we know that the data represents all students. But as a plan B, If that won't work, our next choice would be to survey at least 30 randomly selected students in each grade level. That will allow us to disaggregate the data at least by grade level. We probably won't have enough data to disaggregate by other student groups, but at least by grade level we could provide disaggregated data. And if that's still a problem, your schools are saying there is no way we can survey 30 students in every grade level, then at the very, very least, we can still make conclusions about the school if they survey 30 students randomly selected from the entire student body. We will not be able to do any disaggregation by grade level, which would be really not good, but we can still move forward with 30 for the entire school. One other reminder is that it's not real hard to survey every student in the school if the teachers will engage. So if your counselors are talking with your principals or you're talking with the principals, what we just need to do, like in a middle school, is to ask every sixth period teacher to survey the students sometime in the next week or so. So if the teachers will engage and they each survey the students that are assigned to them, then we've got every student in the building. So it's real doable. We would need any school that hadn't surveyed yet to really kind of jump on it right now, and any encouragement that you can give them would be great. So that's one plan B. Another plan B, when schools get behind, is we always will just ask the schools, okay, give us an alternative timeline. And we're very flexible with that. We understand that things happen in schools, snow days or whatever. So anytime that a schedule feels like too tense, we just ask the schools to tell us, okay, what would feel comfortable for you? And then they can work at whatever pace they feel is going to work for them. We have had schools do this entire process over a 3-year period, or a 2-year period, or a 1-year period, and now a 5-month period. The only thing that makes this a rush is getting that Lilly grant turned in. So it would be nice if they stay on a timeline so that they finish their work with us by May 9th, so that we can enable you to have good information to write your district grants. But we're really open to alternative timelines. Another thing you could say to the schools is, have you delegated tasks? And if not, you could say, okay, you're a high school, you've got 4 grades, let's get 4 of your friends together and let's delegate, a survey to each grade level, to each friend. And then the other thing that we really, really want you to do is to brainstorm with us if things are starting to feel overwhelming. There are some shortcuts, that aren't ideal, but we can live with, that, we can suggest. So, I really don't like shortcuts, especially since we're, trying to prepare you to apply for a competitive grant. But if that's what we have to go to keep the schools on board, to make it realistic for the schools, we can do that. But I can tell you also that another thing that's happening right now is your schools are starting to realize that this timeline is like, it's going to be short, and it's going to be really critical that they meet the timeline so that they're ready for the next step. And the schools that are like overwhelmed and a little behind right now, they tend to jump on right now. We just get them an alternative timeline to catch up over the next 4 weeks, and then they're off and running. So talk with Debbie if at the school level, and for you guys, I'm happy to talk with you. So I've had several districts call me already to ask questions or to brainstorm things that are going on in their districts, and that's what I'm here for. So we've been doing this for 20 years with hundreds of schools, and we depend on you to let us know when you need help. So please, please, please call Debbie. Have your schools call Debbie, and for you guys, call me. So, okay. So the other thing that's come to our attention is that for some of you, you have contracted with multiple technical assistance providers, and now you're finding that the services are kind of overlapping. And we wanted to help you think through that a little bit. So some of you have contracted with us. You've also contracted with CEL or IYI or Fleck Education. And we want to make sure that we're not duplicating services, because that could really be not good. So one of the things that you want to do is, if you are working with another technical assistance provider, you need to let them know that you're working with RSC, and that these are the activities that you're going to be doing with us. So your schools have already set up an organizational structure with us. At the district level, you've already set up an organizational structure. You've already collected data, and we've aggregated that data for the district level. We're about to launch in February in the first of our discussions with your stakeholder groups and your future partners. That's in place. We're helping you as a district coordinate services between schools and also vertically. We've given you a way at the district to overview what's going on at the school level. And then finally, the program design you will be doing with us, and then we'll be helping you write your Lilly implementation grant. So I know of at least one district that has contracted with another provider to do these same things. And that can be kind of confusing. So it's like having, an athlete having two coaches at the same time. I mean, which coach do you follow? So it's going to be really important that you coordinate the services that your other technical assistance providers are providing for you with those that you're engaging with RSC, so that you're not duplicating organizational structures or duplicating data collection or whatever. And if you are going to have two different types of data collection, that you're kind of seeing how their data fits into our process and all that. So we've asked your schools to let us know on the RSC uses page which other technical service providers they're using. We're going to reiterate that with them on January 31st, and then we will contact the other providers and also explain to them what the RSC schools are doing with us, and hopefully work with them to see how they might support that process. Now, if you decide for whatever reason that you like another provider's process better than ours, then my recommendation would be that you go with the other provider and use their process and disengage with our process. Trying to engage two planning processes at the same time, I think, would be really kind of confusing. So just as a reminder, when you're looking at, if you've contracted with more than one provider, just some things to remember about ASA is that and this is very different, instead of us coming into your district and us going into your schools, we're developing leadership at the local level, that after your funding is gone and we are gone, those local experts in program design who now understand how to do visioning, how to do data collection, how to do root cause analysis, how to engage different delivery models, they'll be able to sustain this after all the funding is gone. So that's one of the reasons that we don't come into your school to facilitate discussions, that we ask you to do that, because we want the leadership to not be with us. We want the leadership to be with you. Okay, other things about us, we have a history of bringing all stakeholders to the table. We have a history of developing award-winning comprehensive programs. I think the biggest thing is that there's been independent research that shows that our process works in raising student achievement, which is, what this is all about. And we have tons of tools and tons of support. So, just kind of be thinking, if you have contracted with two different providers, and about a third of our schools from our quick look have, we just want to make sure that we're coordinating the services that are being provided by the technical assistance providers. So, okay. So that's kind of a quick look past, and I'm going to pause real quickly here. Debbie, do we have any questions about anything so far?
Yes, we do have a question from Christy.
Okay.
And she asks, if we have decided to drop the other provider, do you know who we contact at Lilly to adjust our budget?
I know a couple of the other providers and us, we have contacted Lilly to see how to go about that, and we don't know yet. I would definitely contact the other provider and let them know. And the same thing, if you decide not to use RSC, let us know. Otherwise, we'll be nagging you to turn in work that you won't be doing. But in terms of how to adjust a budget with Lily, we're not aware of that yet. And if there's somebody else in this call, I have not actually seen, the only thing we've seen is the list of districts that Lily published online. We've not seen any paperwork about anything that's come to your district. Matter of fact, if anybody wants to share that with us, I would love to see that. But if anybody else has an answer to that question about how to adjust a budget once your planning grant has been approved, pipe in here and let us know. Okay, and I will look for that. We have been searching for that data too. And again, if anybody can share their paperwork that came with the notification that your grant was approved, please get that to us. Okay, Debbie, any other questions?
No other questions, but I did look up 14,443 students have surveyed to date.
Yay!
3,000 just today, and 57 total schools have surveyed to date.
Good, good. So we have, so that's amazing. We know though that there's a lot of schools that have not surveyed yet. So if that's one of your schools, and I'm going to show you how to discover that a little later. But yeah, that's fabulous, Debbie. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, so let's look forward a little bit. So we know that in January we got all the organizational structure down and the data collection. So now in February we're going to be working with your schools to set their goals, and I'll walk through this a little bit today, but they'll identify program goals, then they'll look at how do we get, what funding and time is available to address all of our program goals, and then based on the limitations of funding and time, we'll identify priority goals. And those are the goals that we're really going to hit hard with the funding and time that we have available. Okay, so then that will happen in February. So that's what we're prepping with you today and with your schools next week. And then in March, once those priority goals are set, we'll look at what's getting in the way of those goals. And we'll also set up a structure for activity research so that within the schools, they're not duplicating each other's efforts, and also district-wide. Then in April, each of your schools will look at what delivery models they want to use, if it's going to be a traditional school counselor-led model or if they're going to bring in partners from your council, we hope, to also deliver programs that coordinate with the school programs. And then finally in May, we'll start helping the schools to prepare, and what they'll do is to create a 4-year implementation plan and a 4-year budget of funds that they need to deliver the program that they've designed. So, okay, so schools should be finished with their work by May 9th, and then we immediately will begin working with you to write your district grants for Lily. So I would set aside a couple days maybe in May 10th through 19th to really sit down and do that writing. We're going to provide a lot of tools for you. We'll provide suggested language for you, but you're still going to have to sit down and write the grant. So I'd set aside some time right now on your calendar so that you get that done. Okay, so we talked very generally about the Lily grant last time. I want to look a little bit more, now that the planning grant is all behind us, now let's look a little bit more at the implementation grant. And I would like you to start thinking about how can you make that implementation grant as strong as possible. Remember, that's a competitive grant and we want you to get it. So our staff is doing the same thing. We're sitting down, we sat down, in the past couple days, and we've done it before this. We do it every so often. We're looking at that application saying, our school's going to be ready for that. So there's 3 parts to the grant that you'll be writing. And I just want to briefly go over this just to be thinking about, are you going to be prepared for writing these things? The language that's highlighted in red are things that we're going to help you with. So first of all, personnel, who led the preparation, who will lead or manage the implementation. The vision, a brief description of the program to which the applicant aspires. We'll give you some sample language for that based on the elements of school counseling programs in high-achieving schools. That's something that we're rewriting that right now, and that will actually also become a self-study that your schools do. We're developing that as we speak. And then also in vision, you'll describe the features of your program that need to be enhanced, and that will come from the self-study that we give you. And then also the outcomes, and that's actually what we're working on today is your goals, and then for your district, and then we'll drop in some data targets for those goals. So we're working on that part today. So that's the executive summary. It's short, 2 pages. It's just kind of a quick read of what your grant is all about. Okay. Then the next pages are where most of the meat is. This is the narrative. So this is where you're going to go into more detail. So again, you're describing now in more detail the features of a model to which the applicant aspires, features of the current program that do not align with that, and steps you're going to take to align with that model. So, and again, we'll help you through this self-study to prepare to write that. Okay, and then in the narrative part in the RFP, it goes on to explain some additional things that Lily would like to know. They would like to know your rationale for focusing the grant on a specific area. So you may decide that you're going to focus the grant on just your high schools, or on just career development, or on one specific portion of a comprehensive school counseling program. And if that's the case, then they want to know the rationale for that, and we'll provide some data that will help you. You'll be able to get some data out of the system that will help you support that. Then they want to know what are the quantitative and qualitative outcomes. So you'll have through our work, and again we're going to start this today with you, is to create your goals, and then to drop in baseline data and target data. And then later we'll look at, okay, what are the performance indicators? Every 6 months, where would your school be if you're on track to reach these outcomes? So that's going to come a little later. Then sustainability. One thing you have to explain is that how this grant is additive. What that means is that the money's not being used to supplant something that you're already doing. So if you already have a school counselor, you're not going to use this money to pay the salary of a school counselor that's already on board. So how is it additive? And then you're asked to discuss the sustainability plan. And our whole process is about being sustainable. We're creating experts in the school. We're creating an organizational structure that's sustainable. We're creating volunteers in the community that are going to partner with you. So the whole thing really is sustainable with no funding whatsoever. The only thing that we're using the funding for in the next 4 years, from our perspective, is to design and to train. But after that's done, then after that 4 years, then bingo, you're good to go without funding. Okay, the next 3 things talk about your current program, so you'll be able to discuss that. And then if you get funded, they want to know what changes you're going to make to the staff budget responsibilities and the counselor to student ratio. So again, this to me would be a place where Lily would find a red flag that this is going to be something that's not sustainable, or something that's supplanting or whatever. So so I think this is just kind of a check for them. And then 8, describe the planned involvement and support of the community partners and organizations. So when we get to activities in a couple of steps, all the folks on your council, your schools will invite to be partners. And instead of a stakeholder, now they've become a partner. So they're going to be, we've talked about all the issues, and now they're going to become active in solving the issues and in providing programming coordinated with the school to solve the issues that you've identified to help kids make good choices. So just kind of in the back of your mind, be thinking the community stakeholders that are now in your council. Later, we're going to invite, and we think that because of the data, they'll want to just jump forward and say, oh, you say, heck yeah, we want to help. Our Kiwanis Club can do this, or our, sorority can do that, or, whatever. So, okay, so that's coming. Got that covered. Then there's also a section in the RFP that asks you to submit appendices. One is for a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is a bar graph that shows the activities you're planning to do, the weeks that they'll be implemented, and then what percentage of them are complete. So we talked with our programmer and tech staff this morning, and we're on board to create a tool for you so that the activities that your schools have are implementing will appear on this Gantt chart. So it might be that this is the name of a school up here. Here are their activities, and then here's their bar graphs. So we'll provide a tool that aligns with all the activities that your schools are putting in that will spit this out for you. And then a detailed line item budget for this year. Our plan is to create a tool for you as well where you just put the numbers in and it does all the adding and all that for you for each of the 4 years, and then some statements of endorsement and assurances and commitments. So, okay, so that's the app. We think we're in really a good position to help you develop a very strong application. And that's going to start today with goals. So when Lily talks about outcomes, we're going to start today defining the outcomes that you want to see district-wide and within each, and then next week we'll talk with your schools about the same thing. We'll start talking about the goals and what those outcomes will be. Okay, just a reminder, here's the webinar schedule. So you can see today, what's today, January 24th, we're talking about goals and priority goals, and then next week we'll do the same thing with your schools. We've already discussed this with the 2016 schools, so remember they're a step ahead of us right now. So, okay, I'm going to pause again. Debbie, any other questions?
No questions.
Okay, sounds good. And again, you know, I can't encourage you enough to contact me if you just want to chat. You know, call and say, Sue, can we schedule a half an hour talk on the phone if you want to go over this or just talk it through. So, you know, that's part of our service for you, is to be here for on-call support. That can be like a quick, you know, pick up the phone and ask a quick question, or it can be, you know, we'd like to do a conference call with you with our whole steering team for an hour and just schedule that in, and you know, we're good to meet with you. I'm good to meet with you. And your schools can do the same thing with Debbie. So one other thing, some of you are wearing 2 hats. You're on a school team and you're on your district team. If you have a question that's a district question, call me. If you have a question that's a school question, call Debbie. Okay, that's how we're differentiating our services. Okay, so this is an update. We wanted to let you know that the school progress chart is now live in the admin system. I'll show you that when we get online. But basically, you're going to see links to it for 2 places. One, it's over here in the left navigation bar where it says School Progress Report. Just click that. And then also in the end of each month now, we're going to ask you to monitor the school progress. If a school starts falling behind, we will notice, but we also would like you to notice so that between the 2 of us, we can really engage that school. So, okay, and then here's what that report looks like. This is one I'm going to do a lot of examples today with Duneland. So we have not yet told the schools about this, but Duneland found it on their own, and they started submitting things to us. So that was pretty cool. So this is what Duneland's progress report looks like, and you can see that we can see each of their schools across the top. And we can see that 3 of the schools, even though we haven't taught them how to do this yet, have found it. They're eager beavers, and these S's mean that they've submitted the work. Here on the school counseling roster, we have reviewed it and we've said, okay, everything's fine, so there's a green check. And on this one, there was an issue that we needed the school to look at, so we've asked them to revise this. And I think in this case, actually what happened is they submitted it by accident. It wasn't finished yet, so we just asked them to complete it and resubmit it. So yeah, so great. And again, it's perfectly okay right now for you to open this up and see nothing in here. Because it really, we did not expect schools to find this before we taught them about it. So, and that will happen. We're going to send out an email in the next couple days, and then we'll do the training with them next week. So, okay. And then I also wanted to show you on the school side what that looks like. So here's, which school is this? This is Newton Yost. So here's what they're going to see on their website. So here's the submit buttons. So on their website, they submitted this. They're seeing that the status is submitted, and then they're seeing needs revision here. Anytime it says needs revision, if they click on this, there's a little text box that will come up that gives Debbie's comments to them. And then if they're submitted, they know that now we're on the 48-hour timeline. The clock starts for us when they submit them, that we have 48 hours to respond to them. Once in a while, I just need to kind of caution you too. Once in a while, we have a gazillion schools, for whatever reason, all submit something at the same time. We might get behind on that 48 hours, but we 99% of the time we adhere to the 48 hours. Also, one other thing here is that we are in the process of hiring an additional strategic planning specialist to work side by side with Debbie. So some of your schools will be assigned to the new strategic planning specialist, and some will be assigned to Debbie. We hope to have that person on board by next Tuesday. And I can tell you we've had some very, very good applicants that have a history of working with us and submitting work themselves and using our rubrics and in reviewing work that they're doing. So whoever comes in that we end up hiring to do this is going to be able to hit the ground running. And I'm very, very, very thrilled with some of our applicants. I'm really tickled. So that's going to be good. Okay. So, and we'll let the schools know probably on Tuesday who's assigned to which support specialist. And again, that's so we can meet the 48-hour turnaround and be there for the on-call support on the phone. Okay. So pause again. Debbie, any questions?
Yes, there's one question from Christy again. I was trying to look it up real quick. What if our school counselors hit the submit button on the survey aspect, but their students are not done being surveyed? Will this lock our students out of the survey?
No, that will not lock the students out. What I would do is just send Debbie an email and say, oops, I didn't mean to send that to you. And Debbie would then probably mark it as needs revision, and she'll write back to say, okay, please resubmit this when it's ready. So, okay. Any other questions, Debbie?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so now let's look at this coming month's activities. So now we're talking about the future, and specifically we're talking about goals. So, okay, so school activities is, they're doing 3 things this month. They're looking at program goals, expanding resources, and then looking at their priority goals, the things based on how much time and money they have, what they realistically think that they could tackle next year, and then looking forward into the next 4 years. Okay, so because this is a condensed program into these 5 months, the way we're going to handle this is we've had to combine some steps, but the way it's going to work is we're going to have council members do some work before they get to the meeting. So this is what will happen in February. There will be a pre-meeting email to the council members. And in that email, we're going to say, okay, council members, please watch this video. And it will be, I'm hoping to keep that video, we haven't finished it yet, but I'm hoping to keep it at about 30 minutes. And it will say, here's what RSC is. It'll say, it will also do rationale for why this is so important. We'll introduce goal setting, and then we'll explain, okay, here's the task we'd like you to do before the meeting. We're also going to give them a heads up that these tasks are not going to be things that they can do in 10 minutes. The tasks are probably going to be an hour to 2 hours long. So they're really going to have to set aside a chunk of time to sit down and do the task before they come to the meeting. And then we're also explaining, and I'll hit this in the video too, that while this is kind of time intensive, we do recognize and are very sensitive to the fact that that we are using their time, and we'll remind them that this is time well spent, that they're really helping the youth in your community. And I think when they start to dig in the data and they realize how the power you have to change kids in your community, they're going to want to do these activities. At least that's been our experience in the past. So here's what we're asking them to do. We'll give them a link where they can review the program goals data, which is data around your student choices. So that's going to come from the surveys. That's why it's so important that you do those surveys right away, because the next step is to have your councils look at that data. So they're going to go in, look at the student choice data, and then we're going to say, we'll ask them to print that report. And then we're going to say, okay, put a star on any of the choices that you think students in your school should not make. And we used to say put a star on choices that students should make, and they starred everything, which makes sense because we've only listed things that we think are good choices for kids. So this way, to have them have less stars, we're just working it backwards. So they put a star on anything that they think is really not a choice that students in your schools need to make while they're enrolled in your school. There will be very few stars, maybe none, maybe one, I don't know. We typically don't have a lot of things that they want to exclude. Now, and then just to you, we won't tell the council members this yet, but these are going to become the school's goals. So anything that they don't take off the list will become the base of the school's goals. And then we're going to ask them to please circle data that they find concerning. So maybe they think that it's important, that all students know what a FAFSA is in 12th grade. And then, they look at the data and they see only 7% of the kids know what a FAFSA is. That's concerning. So, and then they'll circle that data, and then later when we meet with them, we'll say, do these need to be priority goals? So the things that are not starred tend to become goals. The things that are circled tend to be priority goals. They become things that we really want to focus on because kids aren't making those choices right now. And then the last thing we're going to ask them to do is to look at some of the drill down reports for gender or ethnicity or race or free and reduced lunch, and we'll ask them to look at least one of those drill down reports and to start looking for for guidance gaps. So if there's a Hispanic parent, they might want to look at the ethnicity drill down report and see what kind of choices are Hispanic kids making versus the non-Hispanic kids, and they might find some gaps. If there's somebody that's big in gender equity, they might look at the gender drill down and look for gaps there. So we'll ask them then to identify, do they see trends that would identify that there may be guidance gaps for some groups of students. If your school is typical, it will probably be in your free and reduced lunch kids, tends to be where we find the biggest gaps. And also, if anybody looks at the report card grades drill down report, the kids who get D's and F's, there's huge gaps there, tends to be. So anyway, so that's what your council will do before the meeting. So they're going to come to the meeting having looked at all the data and then with these stars and circles. Then in February, your school's steering teams will facilitate that first council meeting. We're going to train them on how to do that next week on the 31st. And so they'll be discussing program goals, and then they'll be discussing resources. So we'll take a minute with your council to say, okay, here's how counselors are spending their time in our building. And while it looks like we have full-time counselors, our counselors are doing a lot of administrative stuff, and so the reality is we don't have full-time counselors. And we'll present this in a way that is acknowledging that those non-program tasks are good tasks. Somebody has to do them, but we just also want to acknowledge that because of that, our counselors aren't spending 100% of their time doing counseling tasks. So okay. And then we'll say, here's the funding that we think we're going to have available in the next 4 years. And then here's the perception that folks have of our counselors. This will come from the survey also. What we find is that when counselors have time, funding, and a good reputation, that they can accomplish a lot of stuff. And so if any one of these points is lacking, we know that we can't address a lot of priority goals, that there's just not going to be enough time or not enough funding, or maybe we have a great program, but everybody thinks the counselors are awful, that they don't care about kids, and whatever, and so nobody's going to use those programs anyway because the counselors' reputations. So so if there's an issue with these three things, we'll look at, okay, how do we fix those, and then we'll say, okay, based on the fixes, so we're going to maybe reassign some tasks to others. We're going to bring in the Lilly funding, so now we got mega funds. We're going to work on changing the perception of counselors, and we think we know, what's causing that, because we really do care about kids. So we're going to kind of go on have a marketing campaign here to advocate for how much counselors can help kids. We'll work on these things. And then we'll say, okay, if all these things work, we get more time, we get the Lilly funding, and we improve our perception if we need to, then how many priority goals can we do? So I can tell you that in the past, funding has been a big issue, because with that funding, we can purchase time for planning and we can purchase professional development. So funding has been a huge barrier. The other thing with this funding is that we can develop community partners as well. So funding's big. So we're going to assume that your schools, and we hope that you will assume that you're getting that Lilly implementation grant, and that you can say to the schools, okay, we want you to just assume you're going to get this much money and over the next 4 years from this implementation grant, and plan the priority goals according to that. Without that funding, we would normally recommend to schools that they only have 1, 2, or 3 priority goals. With that funding and a well-coordinated design process, which we'll help you with if you continue with us over the planning years, after the planning years, we think that you can tackle a ton of priority goals using different delivery models. So we'll talk more with your schools about that, but yeah, so we're very, very excited that this funding is going to purchase time, and because we have time for development and planning and design, we're going to be able to do a lot more priority goals. So, okay. And then finally, the last thing your schools will do is they'll document all of this online, and then here's the rubric items. Okay, so that's what the schools are doing. And just a couple things we'd like you to consider. First of all, it's really important to, at every moment, remember that program goals are student choices. In RSC, that's what RSC is all about, is helping kids make sound choices. So when we talk goals, it's really what choices do we want students to make. So that's really, foundational here. Then in the goals prompt that we'll give you and your schools is, in order to reach the achievement goals in our school improvement plan or our district improvement plan, we want to impact the percentage of students who choose to do what? Turn in their homework, pay attention in class, ask questions when they're confused, submit a FAFSA, do a college campus visit, what. So that's the goals prompt that we provide to you as a district, and we'll talk about that in a second, but also to your schools. Okay, now it is likely, let me go back. It's likely when you think about a successful student, think about a group of successful students. Successful students tend to all make similar choices, and there's a lot of choices that they have to make throughout the years in a school in order to successfully move, along the pathway of learning. So we've defined what those choices are, and those actually, the survey questions were all about that. But what we wanted to warn you about is that there's likely your schools will have a lot of goals, because there are a lot of choices that kids need to make in order to be successful at school. So, for example, in our survey, we've identified 53 choices that 5th graders need to make, 83 choices that 8th graders need to make, and 92 choices that 11th graders need to make. So there will be a lot of goals, because we're going to include all of these choices in the school's goals. Then we'll narrow down to priority goals, and those will be the ones that we really want to focus on, because not enough kids are making that choice. Okay. So when schools are doing their work, the first thing they're going to see is a list of suggested goals. So they'll just go in and they're going to say, yes, I want to add this goal. I want to impact the percentage of students who know about Indiana 21st Century Scholars Program. So they're going to click that they want this to be a goal. And then they're going to say, this is a goal, but we're going to focus on that in 7th grade. So we want that to be a 7th grade goal for us. And then in this drop down, they can say this is for all students, so all groups, or they can say this is a goal for our free and reduced lunch students, or this is a goal for our Hispanic students, or if they start to see a guidance gap, they can fine-tune that goal to narrow down the students. And that will allow them later to more directly focus their activities. So, you know, if the students group is going to be Hispanic, then how do we deliver the activities so that the Hispanic community and Hispanic students are learning about Indiana 21st century scholars? You know, and there's, you know, all kinds of things you could do, from, you know, printing stuff in a different language or whatever. So, okay, so all those possible goals, you know, the going back, the 53, 83, 92, all those possible goals will appear here. They just check them, say what grade level, and say what groups. And that's how they get their beginning goals. And then the nice thing is that all of these suggested goals already have baseline data from the survey. So any goal that they select from the list of suggested goals, they won't have to collect baseline data on. They already have their baseline data from the survey. So, okay. So then, if the school says, let me go back. If the school says, okay, here's this list of 53 goals, but there's one missing. There's a choice that we think kids need to make that ASA didn't think of, and it's really important to our kids. So that's wonderful. They can create their own goal. So they would say to impact the percentages of students who, they put in the whatever the choice is that they want kids to make, put in the grade level, put in the student group, and save. So they're not limited to the goals, suggested goals that we provide. They can really do whatever they want. They can not include our goals, and they can include others that we haven't provided. Okay, so if they write their own goal, we don't have any baseline data for those goals, so they'll have to collect baseline data, but most schools will only add 1 or 2 additional goals, if any, so it's not a lot of data collection because most of the baseline data is coming from the survey. So, okay. Then, finally, after all those 53 goals are in, or 82 or whatever, then the schools will say, okay, here are our priority goals, and if there's no additional funding and no additional time, you know, there may only be one priority goal. But if there's, you know, if we're assuming that you're getting the Lilly grant, which I would assume that you are, and then we can really expand and, you know, have lots of priority goals. And then we're asked for each of the priority goals. The schools are putting in data. So, and only for the priority goals, not for the 53, but for the 2 or 3 or whatever priority goals they're putting in. So they can say we want to include, we're going to use RSC survey data. If so, the data is already there. They just have to put in what their target is and then the target deadline. And then, or they can check that we want to put in other data. And if they do, they get a text box where they would write what they're counting, and then they put in, you know, how much they counted and what the target data is and what the target is. So in this case, they're dropping the percentage of students who have 10 or more absences from 27 to 10. So, okay, that's that. And one other thing that you might hear your schools talk about is an Instagraph. Because the councils are large, we want to give the councils a tool for coming to consensus. And so when we're looking at all those possible program goals, they would put a little sticky dot, each person would, next to any goal that they want to leave out. And then the next person would put their sticky dot or their X next to that, and we're just building a bar graph of goals that we want to omit. And then, yeah, so that's how that works. Okay. Then expanding resources. So the schools are going to be asked, when they get to that discussion, they're going to be asked to talk about time use. We're going to look at the council will help them come up with ideal time use in each of the types of activities. Their actual time use, which is why we're doing the counselor time use logs right now. And then targeted time use, so what they'd like to see it get to by the end of next year by making some changes in how counselors are used. Then we'll look at available funding, and we'll ask them to include anticipated grant funds, so the Lilly grant, and then we'll also help them look at the processions of the school counselor. Okay, so that's the school activities. I'm going to pause again, and then we'll talk about the district activities, and then we'll close. So Debbie, any questions?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay, so as a district now, your question is, how are you going to help the schools, and how are you going to prepare for writing your grant to Lilly? So just as a reminder, all district activities are optional. You don't have to do anything. So in the online system, here are the district activities. And I'm just going to go to the online system and kind of talk through all these and show you how things are entered. So I'm going to escape out of this. And okay, and I'm logged in as Duneland again. And we'll scroll down to priority goals. And I think I want to maybe make this a little bit bigger if I can. There we go. Okay, so here are the priority goals. I'm sorry, here are the steps for this month for a district. So right now you've registered for this, you're participating live, so we've got that. I'm not going to save these things. And then you want to review the district level student survey data for student choices. So let me show you how to get to that. I'm going to click on the report, and I'm going to say what year I want the data from, 2017. I don't want school level data, I want district level data. I'm going to select a district. So here's Duneland. And then I'm going to select grades. I'm going to say all grades. And I'm going to choose the report. Okay, here are all the reports. And here's the summary report. And then the rest of these are drill down reports. We also have a create a student group if you want to, say give me African American males, we can, you can create your own group. Okay, so the report that I want now is a summary report for plans and choices. So I'm going to click there, and the computer is madly pulling together all the data from all of the Duneland schools. This takes a minute to put together. There we go. And the first thing you should notice is which schools are included in this data. So my guess is that not all the school, and I haven't checked yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if not all the schools in Duneland have surveyed yet. So it may not be that all schools are listed up here. And so here's the first question: do you plan to go to college? This was answered by students in grades 5 and 6. And we can see that across the district there were 312 5th and 6th graders that responded to this question, and 232 said yes, and that gave me 74%. In our work, we always kind of consider that not sure is a no. So we would assume here that 26% of 5th and 6th graders were not planning yet to go to college. Okay, and then one other thing I wanted to point out to you is here's the same question again, this time by students in grades 3 and 4. This is just something we had to do because originally this was a 5 through 12 survey, and then we added on grades 3 and 4. We're in the process of combining these. It's very difficult to do without losing the historical data, but so once in a while you might see a question twice, and that's why, different grade levels. Okay, then you may wonder, well, which students are not planning to go? Let's find one with more grade levels. Which students are using the internet to search information about college? What grade level? Well, if you get curious about anything, you can go back and ask for one of the drill down reports. So I'm just going to pull up, I have no idea what kind of results I'm going to get, but I'm going to disaggregate by grade level. I could also disaggregate by any of these other ways. But I'll just do grade level. So here comes the same report, but this time I have a disaggregation of grade levels. So did you use the internet this year to search for information about college? So only 4% of the 3rd graders, 2% of the 4th graders, 22 5th, 11th, or 19 in 6th grade. And that may be okay with you. On the other hand, you may want your 3rd graders to start really, even in 3rd grade, searching for college information on the internet. So yeah, so this data just just is interesting, I think, and it will help you to further focus your programs. Notice that in some of this data, it says that the N is less than 10. This is in this case, this is because the survey was not given in grades 7, 8, or 9. It was only given in grades 3 through 6. And that also may indicate, like in the race and ethnicity survey, you may not have 10 American Indians in your district, and if so, then we don't provide any data for confidentiality reasons. Okay, so that's that. That's how to look at that district data. So I reviewed district data. I'm going to enter district goals. Now, let's talk about this for a second, and I realize I'm up against my time limit, so I'm going to go pretty fast here, but this is really important. Normally, and this is, if you're daydreaming, really listen now. Normally, we would not suggest that the district mandate anything. We think that when things are developed at the building level, the schools will be much more engaged. However, because of the Lilly grant, we know that you're going to need to turn in a district grant application with district goals. So we would suggest to you that you do have some district goals, but use them sparingly, and not have tons of them. And actually, I'm going to kind of edit what I just said. We're going to suggest to you that you have district priority goals, because we don't want you to mandate anything to the schools that's not a priority. So, but to get in the district priority goals, you need to enter them first as goals. So let me show you real quickly how to do that. I'm going to click enter, and I've looked at all of that data, and I've discovered that, across the board something's an issue, and so we're going to make that into a district goal. So the first thing that I do to enter a goal is I'm going to add suggested program goals. So if there's something in the data that is disturbing to you and you're putting a goal around there, you're going to look for the related goal in this list of suggested goals. So let's say I'm going to have 3 priority goals per grade level. So I might say, okay, this is going to be a 5th grade goal for, selected grades, 5th grade goal for all groups. This is going to be a 4th grade goal for all groups. So I would go through these and just select the priority goals. If for some reason you want to have a gazillion goals, not just the priority goals for your district, you can put them in if you want to, but I would really recommend against that. I would say just the things that you're going to mandate for schools and that you want that to be the focus of your Lilly grant, I would put in here. So you'd go through, check the ones you want. I am going to hit save at Duneland. After we're finished, I'll come back and delete these so they won't show up. So I'm going to add the suggested goals. And now those are in there. You'll see that they have appeared here. I can add other program goals that I create for the district. And then I finish that step, and I'm going to go back to the process page. Whoops. And remember, anytime you get lost, I'm going to pretend that I'm lost. I'm going to go back to the process page and scroll down to, I have now done this step, enter district goals, and now I'm going to enter the priority goals. This is just a 2-step process we have to do to make the system work. I know we're duplicating. So now we're going to select priority goals, so I'm going to click enter. Here are the program goals that I just put in, and I'm going to say that, in this case they're both going to be priority goals, or maybe let's just say I just want to have one priority goal. I'm just going to click one. I'm not going to have this one be a priority goal. Then I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to go back to the process page, and now I've got my priority goals in there, and I'm going to, one thing I forgot to do is I'm going to go in and enter the priority goals data. So I'm going to click that, and here's the data table. I'm going to put in the target. Our staff, as we speak, is working on the technology to allow the aggregated data from all of the school surveys to appear here. So there will be a number here, and then you just set your target. If you're working on this for the Lilly grant, I would suggest maybe putting in a target for 2018, then add a target and put in 2019, and all the way up to the end of 2021 at the end of the implementation grant period, and just keep building that out. In terms of how many priority goals to have at the district level, I would suggest at the very most 10 per grade level. I would not do that more than that, because remember, the schools are going to be adding their own priority goals to the mandates that you provide for them. Okay, back to the process page. Almost finished. Oops, there we go. Process. Why am I getting that? Oh, it's telling, this is a great warning. It's telling me you haven't saved anything. Do you want to leave the page? Yes, leave. Okay, now I'm going back to the process page. Excuse me. I'm going to go back down. I've got my district priority goals in. Then this step is asking you to please let your schools know that this is a district priority goal, and we need you to do that before the 31st, so your schools know that when they begin their goal work, they're going to be building upon the district-wide goals that you've already identified. And I would, if I were in your position, I would explain that we're only doing this because there's a grant involved, and normally we don't want to be top-down, but in this case we're applying for a grant from the district, and so we need to have some district goals in our district app. So if you didn't want to do this, I suppose you wouldn't have to, but in your Lily application you would then have to say, okay, our goals are in this school ABC, in this school, you know, DEF. We just think that it's going to be a lot more clear in your application if you've got some district-wide work in there. So, okay, but that's up to you, of course. Okay, so we're notifying the schools of any goals that you want to do district-wide, and then we're also notifying the schools, and again, I just want to go back, this is voluntary, this is optional. You do not have to have district-wide goals if you'd rather have each school have their own goals. So you just kind of need to think about, you know, how that's going to play out in your grant application when you're writing the section about outcomes for your district. Okay, then you're going to notify the schools about funding that's available for the next 4 years. If they know that you're applying for the Lilly grant and they can expect to, you know, have X amount of dollars to develop and prepare their programs over the next 4 years, that's going to allow them to tackle a lot more priority goals. Then if you don't get the funding, the schools can always adjust, or I would suggest you got a great program, if you don't get the Lilly funding, go after some other funding. So, you know, or chunk it up and say, you know, Kiwanis Club, can you fund this part, and Optimus, can you fund this part? So I would never let a lack of funding stop me from doing something. I'd go find the funding if it's a good idea for kids. So, okay, then the other thing we're going to do here is to monitor the school progress. Notice that the goals are due to us, the school's goals are due to us on February 24th, but we're asking you to monitor this on February 17th, so a week ahead of time. So you would just open this up, this report, and if anybody's behind on their program goals or any other step or their priority goals, you might just give the school a little nudge to get those done so that everybody's, you know, working on the same timeline. So, okay. And then finally, you're going to review the school's priority goals, and this will be a report that opens up that shows you all of your schools and which priority goals are selected. And I think oh, cool. Okay. So this is going to show you, you know, nothing's in here yet, so the data's not there, but this is going to show you each of the goals and which schools are doing it. And then that may help you understand that there are some goals that all the schools are doing that are not part of your district goals. And if so, you might as well add them in as your district goals. So then you can come back here in the last step and add in any additional program goals priority goals that you notice that all the schools are going to do anyway, so you might as well have it as a district goal. Okay, so that's it in a nutshell. One more slide and then we'll close, or a couple more. And Debbie, let me pause here and ask if there's questions.
No questions.
Okay. Okay, so we did that, and then finally the discussion. This is the last slide. So the discussion for your district level team is, do you want to have district level priority goals? The downside is that this becomes a top-down mandate, and the schools tend in that situation not to engage as much. The upside is I think it's going to make it easier for you to communicate district-wide initiatives in the Lilly grant. So our recommendation is to have a few district-level goals, things that you think are just really important, and when you look at the data, there's the data showing that it's not a choice that's made very much across the board in your schools. So our recommendation is yes, that you do want to have district level priority goals, but to really limit them, like maybe 3 per grade level, or just ones that are really, really, really important. And then if you are deciding to have district level goals, then which priority goals will you mandate? So recommended, we'll leave that up to you. However, there is one that we think is incredibly important for 8th graders, and that's that they create a 4-year high school course plan based on their career plan goals and their post-secondary education goals. Just breaks our hearts when we see 11th graders and 12th graders who were planning to go to college, or who decide in the 11th grade that they're going to go to college, and there's not time left to take all the college prep courses. So we really recommend that 8th graders have a complete 4-year high school course plan, and we have a lot of resources that can help you with that if that's a goal that you set up for your district. But again, that's just a recommendation, as is everything, and if you have other places that you feel are more important, don't do that one. And then finally, on your district team, who's going to convey to the schools? If you have district level priority goals, remember they need to know that by the 31st. And also the anticipated amount of funding for the schools that you'll be able to provide from the district via the Lilly grant, or whatever funding you have available that would support their work over the next 4 years. So that will help them, especially if you're anticipating on applying for the grant. That will help them be able to think out of the box a little bit more in terms of what's possible, because they'll have more funding to support the time it takes to develop a program and to train people on how to implement a program. So, okay, that's it. We'll pause for questions, and I did upload this to the handouts, so you can download this presentation from the GoToWebinar site. And Debbie, anything additional?
No questions.
Okay, I appreciate that, and again, contact us tomorrow if you want to. And again, I'm so sorry to go over. It's just, there's just lots of happening, and we want to make sure that we're giving you really, really good guidance. And maybe in the future, I know some of you have scheduled meetings to start right at 4:30. You might want to give me a little bit of time past 4:30, just in case we run over a little bit, but I'm trying really hard to keep these to a 1-hour webinar. So, okay, thanks everybody, and Debbie, I'm going to check in with you one last time. Questions?
No, we have nothing.
Okay, thanks everyone. Keep those schools surveying, and call us. Call me if you have questions on the district stuff. Call Debbie if you have questions on the school stuff. So, okay, thanks everyone.